Alicia Amanda Stokes, Mandy to those who knew her best, was a 33-year-old from Oakland, California. Although she'd been on the West Coast for a few years, she planned to move back to be with her mother on the East Coast. On November 25th, 2007, she left in her car after having an argument with a roommate, her brother Aaron. While driving, Mandy was on the phone with her boyfriend when the line went dead. Mandy's car was found. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. We've all been there. We get ourselves into a situation where there appears to be a way out. In fact, there appears to be all sorts of choices. But each one of them has consequences we can't live with. In fact, sometimes those kinds of predicaments are worse than having no choices at all. At least when there are no possibilities, we can kind of just leave everything up to fate. But as adults, and most of the time, we are expected to make a choice. Whether it has to do with our intimate relationships, do we continue to stay in a loveless marriage for the kids, or do we tear our own life and their life apart by getting divorced? Our job, do we sell our company stock when we know bad news is coming, which is illegal, or do we keep our stock and suffer the huge monetary loss? Our family, do we keep a parent on life support for one more day and hope for a miracle, or do we tell the doctor to pull the plug right then? No good choices. As the saying goes, we are in between a rock and a hard place. For the guest today, she is caught between two inconceivable choices. On one hand, she wants to find out what happened to her daughter, even if it means Mandy isn't of this earth anymore. But in doing so, she may send her son to jail since he is a suspect. On the other hand, if Mandy's case isn't pursued, this mother will never get the answers she deserves. Yes, she is in a very hard place. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's site, charlieproject.org. In the time leading up to Mandy's disappearance, she struggled with depression and possible alcohol abuse. She also wanted to move back to the East Coast after growing sick of Northern California. Compounding Mandy's problems, her brother and roommate, Aaron, continued to steal money from her by kiting checks all over the Oakland area. He also had addictions, them dwarfing any problems Mandy may have had. Things seemed to come to a head on November 25th, 2007, when the two siblings argued in public view at their apartment complex about Aaron's behavior and problems. Shortly after, Mandy left the premises in her car. This is verified by a phone call Mandy made to her boyfriend in New York, in which she detailed the argument with Aaron. The boyfriend insists Mandy was in her car driving during the talk. Then, in mid-sentence with no warning, the call went dead. Her boyfriend tried to call her back, but there was no answer and the call went straight to voicemail. Mandy was never heard from or seen again. Her car was discovered 2 days later, but the exact location is in dispute. The police say one thing, while a local who kept a journal and saw the car says something totally different. Everything that Mandy would have taken with her was left in the vehicle, and the car was in good mechanical condition. Aaron continued to raid Mandy's bank account after she disappeared, but whether he actually used her ATM card is not clear. He also would not let the police in when they wanted to check out the apartment for clues weeks after Mandy didn't come back. However, there is nothing concrete that connects Aaron to his sister's disappearance, despite his illegal and curious behavior. He maintains his innocence to this day. Mandy's case remains unsolved. The interview for this episode is with Mandy's mother, Deborah Murray. Unfound News. Have you checked out Unfound, the Season 1 Cases Volume 2 yet? Yes, Volume 2. Well, you should if you haven't. Volume 1 has been out since November 2017 and has a red and white cover. Volume 2 has been out for about a week and has a green cover with stacked manila folders in the background. It features the disappearances of Joshua Guimond, Donnie Smatlack, Andrea Bowman, Robin Abrams, Regina Marie Boss, and Christopher Hyde. The foreword is written by Tad DeBias. Yep, the No Body Guy. Volume 2 is available in both ebook and print form. Next, are you on the Unfound email list? You're on the list if you signed up to listen to the Stephen Kocher episode at unfoundpodcast.com. You're also on it if you and I have had any personal correspondence where I'm writing from unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. I'm going to start using the list to let all of you know about things going on with the podcast that I don't have the time to cover on an episode or on Facebook. It's one more way to give all of you a glimpse behind the curtain on what happens on Unfound. I'm thinking it will be a monthly newsletter. It will contain previews of upcoming episodes, updates on past episodes, anything else Unfound is working on, and links to everything Unfound has going on in way of YouTube, Amazon, and Shopify. If you want to be on the list and you don't think that you're on it, send me your email address at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. And I promise, no spam. And yes, every newsletter will be written personally by me. Finally, I'm going to start running a poll after every episode in the Unfound Podcast discussion group. You, the listeners, will be given choices as to what you think happened in regards to that week's disappearance. I believe this will be a good way for the families to get public reaction, and it could point them in new directions and possibly even start new lines of inquiry. I've messed around with this a little bit here and there, but now I'm ready to make it a weekly thing. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Podomatic, Stitcher, Podbean, and Spotify. In particular, please join us on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for the Unfound Facebook live video show, which is hosted on the Unfound podcast page, not in the private group. The email address, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. The website, unfoundpodcast.com. Please check out the secret Stephen Kocher episode. The website at Trib Total Media, triblive.com/news/unfound. Unfound has Patreon and PayPal accounts. You can contribute for as low as $2 a month. Unfound merchandise, Volume 1 and 2 on Amazon in both paperback and ebook form. The playing cards, go to makeplayingcards.com/sell/Unfound podcast. Shirts for almost all Unfound's cases at unfound-podcast.myshopify.com. This includes the flagship t-shirt, The First Year Cases, that is a collage of everyone from Suzanne Lyle to Jennifer Wilkerson. Please check it out. And please mention Unfound on all true crime Facebook pages and other websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Mandy Stokes, Deborah Murray. Deborah, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
You're welcome, Deborah. Let's start here. Because we're going to be referring to your daughter as Mandy, but her real name is Alicia Amanda Stokes. How did she end up getting the name Mandy, which is, I guess, a shortened form of her middle name?
Right. Well, for some reason, I named most of my kids and used their middle name. So Amanda, she was named after my sister Amanda, and Mandy is a cute name to me, so it became Mandy. Mandy Lou sometimes. And when she was a little baby, and I have a picture of that, I'm holding Mandy as a baby, and I called her Pebbles because I would put a little barrette in her hair.
From the Flintstones.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. But we called her Mandy Lou. Lulu sometimes. She liked Lulu. She actually told me some years ago that she wanted to start up a cafe and call it Lulu's. Lulu's a popular name now. So
And where did you get Alicia from?
Alicia
Oh,
is
Elisa. I'm sorry, Elisa. Okay.
no Alicia. Alicia.
Okay.
I like the name and the flow with Amanda. I almost named her Alicia Miranda, but went with Amanda. I think it's a pretty name.
Yes.
So, but Alicia, it's just a name that I liked.
Yeah, it's a great woman's name. I agree.
Hmm.
I agree.
Yes. Hmm.
Now, Mandy had some brothers and sisters. I don't know if we really want to get into their names or anything, but she had several brothers and sisters, didn't she?
Yes. I had two boys, and then I had Mandy, and of course she was the cutest baby. Uh, and then I had, let's see, then I had two more boys and a girl. And then I had another boy and another girl. The youngest is a girl.
Huh.
And
That's a big
yeah,
family, Deborah.
yes, very big. And it's, there are a lot of blessings and a lot of heartaches. And, um, but I realize that, I have grandchildren now and how precious they are. And
Mm.
so, you just realize that everything that marrying who you marry, having these children, that if a marriage is a mistake or necessarily, not necessarily a mistake, but very trying, you have the blessing of the children,
Yeah.
which needed to come through me, is what I think. Um, but you look back and you wonder, could you done, could you have done something different, something better? So I try not to go there, but sometimes it's hard as a mom,
And
you know.
especially in this case, because of uh, some issues we're going to get into later, regarding
Uh-huh.
family. Tell the listeners a little bit about Mandy. What were her interests, hobbies, as a little girl becoming a young woman? What was she into?
Mandy was into dancing. We put her into dancing. We were living outside of Charlotte, Monroe, and she had a really great dance teacher. And I still remember, I don't know, I think she was about 5 or 6, and she just was always so feisty and a little bit kind of stomp her feet type of thing. And she would love to get dressed up and go to dancing. And her dance teacher moved away, and so I couldn't find a teacher where we were. So I thought, well, I'll take her to the Charlotte School of Ballet, and I took her in, and she absolutely refused to have another teacher. And she stood there with her arms folded, and I can still see it. And she refused to go in. So, uh, needless to say, I did not want to deal with that. So I didn't push it. And, but she did like dance up until she was about, I don't know, maybe 12, 13. It's been a long time, so I may get that may be a little
Okay.
off, but just a little bit of an idea. Um, Mandy, just very feisty. I remember I keep telling the story to my little grandkids. We lived on a little farm, and we had an orchard of dwarf fruit trees, and we had strawberry patches. And I would always tell the girls, um, especially Mandy, do not pick the green strawberries; they will hurt your stomach. So what does Mandy do? She picks the green strawberries
Of course she does.
just to, just to annoy me. And so when we had greenhouses, we grew edible flowers and lots of things, vegetables. Had intensive gardening, and um, it was those times were pretty good. Um,
So she
doing a
was
lot
into
of things.
dance, but she got into other things when she was a teenager. Did she move on to other hobbies, or
Um,
what'd she do?
I'm trying to think. Some things I don't have good recall, but I can have. Well, I do remember when she was 16, she was driving her dad's Toyota truck and had a wreck, and I can still see that image of her when we're on the side of the street with the truck after we'd been called, and how upset she was and how upset we were, and just thankful she was okay. Um, but that seems to happen sometimes when your children start driving.
Yeah.
That's a real scary thing. Um, you just never know. But I'm trying to think of what else she did.
What'd she do in high school? Was she into
Hopefully,
sports or
no, not
academics,
really.
or what?
Mandy's Mandy is very smart. She had a little bit of a math deficiency, kind of like me. Um, she did go on to University of Utah and graduated with honors. I think they were able to somehow work through or work off the math problem so that she could excel, and she did real well with that. But as far as um, I'm trying to remember, I know she liked to run when she'd come home from when we lived in Robbinsville, North Carolina, west of Asheville. When she'd come home from college, she would love to run. So, but I don't. I'm trying to remember high school. It just hasn't come back to me.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Now you had mentioned that she was driving her dad's vehicle and had a wreck. Now she was close to her dad, wasn't she?
Yeah, the girls love their dad. Um, and I think, there was some, dysfunction in the family, certain issues that were, I don't know how much to go into on this particular forum, but there was, alcohol problems with her dad, and um, it when you have that kind of problem, he can be, drinking, and then all of a sudden 6 months you're fine and everything's good, but then, it's quite a up and down for children to live like that. So um, there was some issues with that. Uh, but their father was a very hard worker. Um, he did instill some values in them, even though there were other issues that he fell down on, with the drinking, etc.
Now he passed away a few years before she disappeared. How did she handle that?
She had a hard time. She missed her dad, and then not having the best relationship, as an adult, with his addictions. People really aren't available to you like that. When they're like that,
Emotionally available.
they're not available.
Mm.
So there was, that feeling of not being able to have that closeness. And then, of course, she moved away, was living um, in California.
Mm.
Um,
When he
and
when he passed.
yeah, yeah, she was
Okay.
out in California, and before she moved from here, she was into social work. She did quite a bit of social work, which I'm sure could be overwhelming, but she was good at it.
How did she end up in Oakland? You'd already mentioned. I guess she went to the University of Utah. Is that correct?
She did.
How did she find her way from North Carolina to Utah and then from there to Oakland? That's the whole way across the United States.
Well, let's see. When she was married, um, in her early 20s, and that's when she went to the University of Utah. And of course, the family moved there partly because she was there, and we wanted to, see Mandy more, a lot more than we were seeing her. When we were back east, she would come home, and um, it was so sweet because she even as she was an adult, she would like to get in the bed with me and her dad,
Hmm.
just to cuddle with me, and so
But then she went to the University of Utah, and
uh-huh,
how did she end up in Oakland? How did
yes. um Let me think. So she divorced her husband and came back, and she came east and was into social work. Sometimes she would babysit for my grandson when he was a little baby. He's almost 15 now, and she would watch him when he was little. Um, Mandy and I were not as close then as we became later. Um, yeah, there was a bit of an attitude there and issues, and we finally worked that out. But anyway, she left Asheville, and I don't know the time frame. I can't recall that.
okay?
She worked her way out uh, to Berkeley in the Oakland area, and she roomed with her longtime friend, who's in Berkeley now, who's becoming a doctor.
Wow.
Yeah, and she and um, her sister are probably Mandy's closest lifetime friends.
Mm.
And
Were you worried about her being out there? Were you worried about?
um, no, I mean, um, no, not worried. I just, we weren't that close at the time, and I would always enjoy hearing from her. Um, I know that she was struggling with some things. Uh, I think she was struggling with, her dad dying, and um, I think she did have a little problem with drugs. I don't really know. She didn't share that with me. Um, so I feel like at one point, she, um, I had a boyfriend that passed away. Well, he went on life support, and I called Mandy, and she immediately booked a flight and came to be with me for a week. And we kind of got reconnected, and she was so caring and enfolding and loving to me throughout that period of time at the hospital. And then she reached a point where she said she could not, she needed to leave. I think she was, it was stressful to be in a hospital
Yeah.
and handle what was going on for a week. And so she left, and then the other sisters came to help me through. The ex-boyfriend was put on taken off life support and moved on, passed on. So, but that facilitated that person being in that situation, dying actually, facilitated Mandy being here with me, which reconnected us. And we were on the phone quite a bit after that, almost every day.
Did Mandy also have a sister in the Oakland area?
Yes, my youngest daughter moved to San Francisco and was there 5 years. She did. Uh, she um, she and Mandy are very close, very very close since she was born. Mandy was about 15 when Jenna was born, and at first Mandy was like, "Oh, a little sister," but then they just were so close that she adored Jenna, and they did quite a few things together. Um, but yeah, they were very close.
Okay, so her sister was out there as well in the Oakland area. Did this younger sister move out there to be close to Mandy, or did Mandy move out there to be close to her sister?
Mandy was out there before. Um, Jenna moved out there, I'm pretty sure. Um, Gosh, when you go through something like this, it really changes you and it shocks your system. And there are things that I feel are a little off and
Mm,
what I can recall sometimes because of this jolt to my psyche.
yeah, yeah.
So excuse me if I'm off, but I believe, but I know Jenna was out there for 5 years and they got together quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. And you're
But
saying that Mandy was out there even longer than that in the Northern California area.
yeah, she was in Oakland. She and her friend, her longtime friend, were roommates, and then that shifted. Um, Mandy wanted to move in by herself into a place, so she moved several times. I went out there to visit a few times, stayed with Mandy one time, and then stayed with my youngest daughter a few times. Um, Mandy, uh, uh, Mandy and her younger sister they went to Alcatraz and, did fun stuff together like that.
Okay. So let's get into the weeks and months before her disappearance. Was she working? What was she doing? Um, and we'll get into maybe a boyfriend that she had. But right now, was she working? What was going on in her life before
Uh-huh.
she disappeared?
She had been working at a cafe, I don't recall the name of it, before what she did was she was going to JFK University, and I remember we talked about it. She was having qualms about she was taking psychology classes. She was doing quite a lot of hardcore uh, cases at, I think she said the VA or some hospital that were very difficult for her. But she seemed to like to get into the nitty gritty of it. And she was leaning towards wanting to go into something about social justice or try to help women in prison. And that was what she was leaning towards when she talked to me about that. But she decided to take a break and went to visit her boyfriend in New York. And she went there for a month and stayed with him, and we would talk on the phone. She'd tell me about his cute little dog, and she really liked his cute little fluffy dog, and she thought I would too, because she knew what kind of little dogs I've had in my life. And so she would share things with me.
How did those two meet? If he was in New York, she was in Oakland. How did they meet?
Uh, I think they met in Las Vegas, I think.
Hmm.
I could be wrong, but um, I think that's where they met.
And they
Yeah,
kept this kind of long distance relationship going to the point where she actually went the whole way to New York to stay
yeah,
with him for a while. I mean, for like you said, a month. That's a considerable amount of time.
yeah. She took a break from school. She had her money for school in the bank, and she just took a break to try to figure some things out because she wanted to shift in that, what she was doing. Um, they went camping. I think they went somewhere in Florida where he has relatives. So they took some trips and, um, did quite a bit together, and she seemed to enjoy that. And I think he was going to get or had gotten some little place in Manhattan, or maybe that's where he lived, and then he was going to get some kind of little vacation place that they were excited about.
And so she's there for a month, but did he say, and we'll just use his first name, John. Um, did she say something to him before she went back to Oakland about being fearful about going back to California?
She told me
Oh, she
on the
told you.
phone.
Okay.
She told me. She said, "Mom, I'm kind of afraid to go back," and she had reminded her in the past to help her follow through with some things, because sometimes she didn't always follow through. I mean, we all have that happen to us, but she was going back that Thanksgiving weekend to pack up her apartment and come stay with me in Atlanta. So she told me that she was afraid to go back, and I said, I don't remember why she said that, but I reminded her that she needed to go back and pack up her stuff. She said, well, Aaron could do it for her. And I'm like, Mandy, do you really think that would work? So, I have a lot of feeling around that conversation. So anyway, she did go back, and
She disappeared not long after that. And once she got back to Oakland after seeing John, it wasn't too long after that she disappeared.
no, no, she was back for Thanksgiving, and she was going to spend it with her sister, but she evidently was not in the mood or something, and she, I think, had gone to Walmart or something on Saturday before the Sunday that she went missing. But she had been back, maybe from Tuesday maybe to Sunday. That was yeah.
So not even a week. Not even a
I don't
week.
think don't
Okay.
think so.
Would you say that around this time it sounds like she was having some apprehension about her education? Like you said, she was changing maybe tracks in her life, education tracks, maybe going to a different type of education, maybe wanted to
Yeah,
do something different kind of employment. Would you
yeah,
say that, so that brings stress into anybody's life? Would you say
yes.
that she might have been depressed as well? What do you think about that?
Maybe. Maybe. I think sometimes as you look back on your life and you start thinking, wow, my dad's gone. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my life. I mean, and, she did have an issue with if she would drink alcohol, it would not be good. So she was on a medication for that. Trying to manage things, I think, just like a lot of people. Um, and I wanted to just insert something here
Please.
that happened a long time ago. Would that be okay?
Please, go ahead.
Well, when my grandson was born 15 years ago, uh, was I had studied midwifery in Utah. I had become a certified doula to help women in childbirth, and when my grandson was born, Mandy and we were all there at the hospital, and I was there right next to near my son, and I'm thinking, oh boy, and I'm just so close, wanting to just touch that baby, and then I had to back away, to let my son do it.
Mm.
Because I was so excited, and I remember Mandy telling me, Mother, I have never seen you so happy in what you did today, and helping and being involved in this. And he became a doula, and I had, left that out. But
Mm.
she, what she's very caring, good-hearted, but would not let anybody mess with her. It's like
Mm.
she's very, very sassy. So that was a really good part of her.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Deborah. Thank you.
Thanks. Hmm.
Now you had mentioned, so maybe we should just be specific. Specific. Let me try that again. Maybe we should be specific on this. What was she doing for her job at the time that she disappeared? Where did she take off from to be able to go to New York and for that month?
Well, I know she was working at a cafe before, and she also had her grant money or some money for school, and she was going to school full time, pretty much full time, as far as I recall. Um, and doing quite well, according to I had talked to some of a couple of her professors um,
Mm,
after she went missing about her.
okay. And I don't want to hit this too hard, but it had been brought up before. Was she doing some drugs at this time? And would this be marijuana, or would this be something a little harder? What were your suspicions at the time, and how would you even know about this?
I suspected possible pills just because I didn't ever think it would be. Um, I don't have experience myself with drugs. I can't even take an antidepressant. So, um, I can't, uh, I can only know from what I hear and from what I've experienced through kids who have done drugs and what I've heard. I know she was probably doing something because I know there had been what I had heard that she had done some drugs when she lived here in Asheville, and I was not. I don't think I was living. I lived here part of the time in Asheville. I lived here for probably a year. Then I think I went back to Atlanta, and I worked for over 10 years.
Okay,
So I don't know because she didn't want me to know anything.
right. But as you stated, even if she was doing something like that, maybe even if it was prescription pills, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything illegal. But it didn't seem to affect her work history. Didn't seem to affect her education as either, being that she was doing.
Absolutely not.
Okay,
No.
all right.
Mm-mm.
You had already mentioned his name, but his name is Aaron, and he is also a child of yours, and he ended up being Mandy's roommate. How did that happen, and how did you feel about that when it occurred?
All I know, and I don't know the length of time, is that he was living with her. I know she would tell me that, some things were really good when Aaron was there. They were close, but she said that she would let him use her car and she would find tickets in the glove compartment that hadn't been paid. Those things were draining her. He would use use the car, get tickets and not let her know. Of course, you have to write that off to, being a heroin addict and I don't know what else I mean, that's enough to be on,
Mm,
but uh, it became a drain on her to have him there. Um, Even though they loved each other, I even found a note from Aaron how much he loved his sister and appreciated her. But then his actions, using the car, etc., and the check writing on her account to get money out while she was gone, um, she found out about when she got back
when you say
in
when she
New
was
York.
gone, when you mean when she was in New York for that
When
month?
she was in New York, when she got back, I know that was part of their argument. According to Aaron and John, she had told John about the argument on the phone,
Yeah.
and it was about family issues and me and the money, and yeah, that
Okay.
was
Well,
the argument.
let's backtrack a little bit. Did Aaron have these issues before he moved in with her in California? And once again, did you have any apprehensions about those two living together?
Yes, because I know how Aaron has done in the past with another sister, how he's done other people, how he's just been entangled in this drug use for so long. it just was one thing after another, trying to hold a job down, then, staying with whomever. It's just very sad, and it's epidemic in this
And
country everywhere.
and Mandy chose to let him come. Was he living in North Carolina and moved the whole way out there, or was he somewhere else? And Mandy knew about these issues with Aaron before he moved in with her, I guess.
I'm sure she knew. He was living in Oklahoma, had a longtime girlfriend there, that ended up, and I don't recall what the circumstances out there with Mandy. And no, I didn't think it was a good idea, um, from past history. Um, so, but grown children don't always listen.
Of course. Of course, maybe she wanted to try to help him out. Maybe she
That's
was,
my. Mhm. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Go
that,
ahead.
that's probably might have been her motivation.
Yeah, I agree. I think she really did want to help him. But enabling, we don't realize we're enabling when we try to help.
And
So,
was he an older or younger brother of Mandy?
let me count. She's younger because there's two boys and a girl, and then let's see. Yeah, he was younger.
She
He
was
was
young.
younger.
Aaron was one of the first two boys you had.
No, he
Oh,
was the. Let's see. Um, he was the fifth child.
okay. So she was older than he was, and so maybe she was trying to take him under her wing.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. And we do have to remind the listeners that Mandy was 33 when she disappeared. She was not.
Correct.
It was not like she was 21 or 22. She was early 30s. Okay.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
they have this contentious relationship going on there, and has his issues, but Mandy knew about them before he got there.
Mhm.
Maybe he was trying to help him out. Maybe Mandy had a couple issues on her own, but she was going to school, doing well, had a job, had this boyfriend in New York. So we
Mhm.
come to, and maybe I should ask you this: what about this other sister that was out there? Was she corresponding with Aaron? Were they getting along? What was going on with
Mm,
that?
they would see each other occasionally, but they don't really know each other that well. He's been in and out of the family, mostly out. So they weren't real close. Um, they saw each other occasionally, but Mandy and her sister were very close.
All right, so
Yeah.
Mandy and her sister were close, but Aaron kind of off here on his own, at least a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've gone through Mandy being in Oakland. We've gone through Aaron being in Oakland. Of course, this other sister that also lives in California. What do we know about the day of November 25th, 2007? What have you found out about that day, the interaction between Mandy and Aaron for that day? What do you know?
Okay. What I recall is I got a call from Mandy uh, early the morning of the 25th on a Sunday. Um, it was dark outside. I was living in Atlanta and working, and she, of course, was in Oakland. Aaron was on the other line. I guess it was maybe a, uh, what do you call a landline? Um, and she was telling me, she said, I want you to tell your son how much you love him. And I could tell Aaron was agitated on the other, I could tell he was agitated. Or maybe he got on the phone. And but I did try to talk to him, but he did seem like he was on something, agitated. And Mandy was saying, I'm not sure what's going on with him. And she said, Mom, I'm not doing drugs. And I said, I don't know what I said, but I said I'd really like to talk. And so she got off the phone and uh, said she would call me back. She said she was going to get her coat on or something and go somewhere. And I said, well, I want you to call me back. So I felt like I needed to hear back from her, because something obviously was going on. So it was just so late at night for her, and she just seemed concerned about Aaron. And so that morning, I kept trying to call back, couldn't get her on her phone. Kept trying all day, all night, or at night. And then the next day, come to find out, she had called her ex-husband and said pretty much the same thing, that she was concerned about Aaron, the way he was acting, and that she really wanted to try to help him. I know that in the past she had talked to a drug dealer to get them to stop selling to Aaron. I'm not sure that was such a good idea, but Mandy's very feisty, and I mean, she could go down a zip line, she could get on a surfboard. She just, would really she just had a lot of life in her. And
During that conversation, so we just need to set this up. You're in Atlanta, which is in the Eastern time zone of the United States, and you're telling me that it was still dark out. So let's say it was 6 in the morning in November. You're telling me that she called you at that time. It would have been 3 in the morning in California. So she's calling you at 3 in the morning. She and Aaron are calling you at 3 in the morning.
Correct.
And you said that Aaron sounded very agitated. How would you say that Mandy sounded? Would you say that she sounded agitated? Frankly, did she sound high? Did she sound of her right mind?
She really sounded in her right mind, because she's like, Mom, I don't know. I mean, this sounds weird, but she asked me, do you think his Kundalini's been activated? I mean, Mandy and I would talk about, the chakras, a lot of things about the body. We talked a lot about, those types of things, when we would talk. And so that was something she said, Mom, can you tell me what that means? And so I think she sounded, good to me. But then again, I could be glazing over something, not recalling, but she seemed pretty coherent, just
And
concerned about her brother.
so she, after you got off the phone with her, though, she talked to her ex-husband, basically having kind of the same conversation. And then you tried calling her back later, I guess that morning, maybe into the early afternoon, which would have been still in the morning in California, and she didn't answer the phone.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
No. And as the day went on, I became a little agitated and not knowing what to think, and just kept calling and trying to figure it out. I may have called Aaron that day. I just don't remember. But I do know that that morning, around 10:30, that Sunday morning that she disappeared, she was on the phone with John, the boyfriend, asking him to fly her out back to New York. And she was saying that that she and Aaron had an argument about money and about, her moving to be with me, and about the family. She was upset and said that Aaron told me that she wanted him to leave. So Aaron told me what his side, or whatever he feels happened. And then, of course, when she was talking to John, the phone went dead. Not sure if the phone wasn't charged enough, if battery went low, or what happened. And that was it. No more contact with anybody that we're aware of.
Let's talk about that phone call. Do you have any idea? It's okay if you don't. Do you have any idea how long that conversation might have been? I'm guessing it wasn't
No,
maybe like a couple hour conversation, but probably in minutes.
um, I don't know. That's a very interesting question. I would really like to find out because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It probably was, I know it was a few minutes, but I just don't know. I
Okay.
mean, the police might have that information. They should.
Probably. But the way, and you didn't, of course, didn't find out about this phone call till days afterward. At that point, where she was talking to John, you didn't know, of course, anything that any of this was going on. You didn't know about this other argument we're going to talk that she had with Aaron here in a moment. But just so we understand this phone call, the phone went dead. It wasn't like Mandy said, hey, it didn't sound like she was getting attacked or anything like that. It was just simply as if she drove into a dead cell zone where there was no
Yes.
reception.
Yes.
Okay. She didn't say, oh, there's somebody coming toward the car. She didn't act like somebody was trying to open the door of her car because John said that he was under the impression that she was in her car, right? Going somewhere.
Yes. Yes. He, that's what I recall from him was that she was driving and that part of the conversation I left out was when she asked for him to fly her out, he said, because she was upset, he said, I want you to calm down and I want you to call your mom. And that's all I remember.
Mm-hmm. And of course, she didn't call you. The conversation continued, and that's when the phone uh, died. But once
Yes.
again, it was just wasn't like she was talking and somebody attacked her. The phone just went dead. Did he try calling her back when that happened?
I'm sure he did. It's just, when something like this happens, it, I look, as I'm thinking back on when he came to help us search for Mandy, put out flyers, he seemed highly medicated. I mean, I'm sure he was so distraught, and I just don't recall some things. I know he stayed at the apartment. He stayed at Mandy's apartment when he came into town. But yeah, I don't want to get out of sequence here. I don't mean to do that. So,
Okay.
um,
Okay. Let's talk about this. The argument that was witnessed between Aaron and Mandy that morning.
mhm.
When did you find out about that argument?
Aaron told me about the argument they had, and then he told me that, well, according to what Aaron says, is that from what I recall, Aaron said that they argued about the family and about the fact that she was coming to live with me and how would I handle certain things if she was using or um, and then they got into an argument about the money that he'd been taking from her and she felt like he needed to leave. She was very upset about those things. And they, of course, the siblings, would said some things to each other, and the argument evidently was heard. Mandy lived up 3 flights. They were outside in the morning, that Sunday morning of the disappearance, arguing. Someone, a witness, said that they went to the airport. They were arguing outside. She came back and they were arguing. And I guess she had told the police about that. And my thought is, why didn't she call the police? Which could have changed the course of things. I don't know, but uh, you you can't think that. But anyway, they argued, and according to the witness, she ran upstairs, he ran upstairs, and nothing after that.
Nothing after that. But we're pretty clear though that the phone call to John happened. Mandy made that call after this argument, not before, but after. So there is
Yes.
proof that Mandy was alive and everything else. after this argument, no matter how wild the argument might have been.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, that's true, and it's a very good point
Okay.
that I'm sure has not really been a part of the conversation throughout this whole thing.
Okay. Have you ever had a chance to talk to this witness yourself when you eventually went out there? Do you know who this person is? Any opportunity to do that back then?
No, and in retrospect, I would have liked to have gone back out and tried to do some investigating, but I just basically went into somewhat of a cocoon. I was not functioning as well as I wanted to be because you have this shock to your system, your psyche. You have all these thoughts and what could have happened to your daughter, not knowing. So I feel like I haven't functioned as well as I'd like to, but I feel like I'm coming back and getting stronger because until you experience something like this, you can't know the turmoil, the nightmare, the I mean, I feel for my son Aaron. I don't know what happened. I know he loved his sister. I know losing one child and not knowing what happened is a continual nightmare. And I would very much like to know something.
Mhm. So you talked to her that morning, once again, very early in the morning. You tried calling her back later. She didn't answer, but she did have this argument with Aaron. She called her boyfriend. In fact, maybe when you were trying to call her is when she was on the phone with him. We just don't know. But even when he
Right.
tried to call her back after the phone went dead, she didn't pick up for him either. You were worrying
Mm-mm.
about her on that Sunday. What happened those next few days? When did you finally realize that something wasn't right? Who called you? Did Aaron call you? Did your other daughter call you? As much as you can
Uh-huh.
remember, Deborah.
Right. Um, Aaron, I believe, called me on Monday to tell me that Mandy had not come home. He said she had not come home. According to what he said, she had left to run errands, and that was it. Um, uh, at that point, we didn't know anything. We were just hoping maybe she, was somewhere cooling off or, or something. I mean, I don't know after the argument. I don't know. And
Hmm.
so I asked Aaron to please call the police and talked to him either that night or the next morning. Said, did you get in touch with anybody? Said that he called the wrong police or something. I don't know. So I proceeded to just handle it myself. Call, um, the Oakland PD and report her missing. Just frantic, um, trying to figure out a way to get out there. Uh, and of course, it took me a week or two before I could even leave, which was absolutely daunting. I don't know. But anyway, I guess the next few days, I called the police, or maybe it was, I don't know the time frame of talking to the police till they went to the apartment to check on Mandy or to check the apartment. Aaron, of course, was there, would not let them in. I was on the phone with Aaron telling him, you need to let them in, let them search. He didn't want to do that. My thought is because of maybe drug paraphernalia. Amanda usually kept the apartment. She was very neat. When I got there, the apartment was a mess. But Um, yeah, that was upsetting. He would not let them in for various reasons. The conclusion can be drawn for a lot, certain reasons because of being a heroin addict, but it doesn't mean what some people may think it means. I don't know, but
Just because he didn't want to let them in the apartment doesn't mean he had anything to do with Mandy's disappearance. I'll say it. I'll say it
thank
for
you.
you. All right,
Thank you.
that doesn't necessarily mean anything. We know that people, if he was into drugs, you don't know what's going on in their minds. They're paranoid. They don't see reality, even if they didn't have anything to do with a crime. They still act that way. So it's not
Exactly.
necessarily suspicious. It's not helpful, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's suspicious. However, you just have to throw that fact in with everything else.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for saying that. So what happened was the police were not able to get in at that point. Um,
Did
and actually,
let me be clear about one thing though. You were asking Aaron to let them in. What was the reason he was giving you for not letting them in? Did he ever give you a
um,
reason?
I don't, I don't recall really. No, I don't remember. He seemed irritated with me, anyway, because they were knocking on the door. He's an addict. Um, it's just, I mean, I don't know. I'm just not able to recall everything.
Okay. And what about your other daughter? Where was she? She's in the area. Was she doing
Uh-huh.
anything? Did she try to go over to the apartment? Did she know about Mandy disappearing? You
Oh
know,
yeah.
okay.
She knew, and for a friend of Mandy's came into town, uh, and was going to see Mandy, and comes into, well, Mandy's missing, and so he helped Jenna cope and get flyers out, printed flyers, and helped Jenna. Jenna was in San Francisco, and that's where he was. So he really helped facilitate that search until I could get there, and did a lot. This friend did a lot to help. Um,
Did Jenna ever go over to the apartment and try to get into it in those few days after
uh,
Mandy disappeared? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is Aaron not letting the cops in is one thing. Not
uh-huh.
letting his sister in is something else.
I'd have to ask her. I'd really have to ask her because
Uh,
I don't recall,
okay.
unless she was, too distraught. She would have to take, the train or whatever to from San Francisco to Oakland. And she may have. I mean, that seems silly that I don't remember that, because I know that if it were me, I would probably be right over there. So she
Okay.
may have.
All right.
I mean,
We
maybe
just don't
she
know,
and
and
the friend did.
maybe that's something you could ask her, if she wants to reveal that. But we just don't know, and you don't remember at this point.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. I mean, I do not recall that. But as I said, there's some things that I don't know if I had a break in my neurotransmitters or something, but there are just some things that aren't there.
Okay. Did you happen to in these almost, I guess, about 2 weeks it took for you to get out to Oakland? Did you have a chance to talk to Mandy's boyfriend John? And I mean, how did you find out about this conversation that they had on that Saturday or Sunday? Excuse me, that Sunday.
I know that we spoke when he got there. I'm sure that we spoke before. Um, there again, um, just trying to get a flight, which was facilitated by a best friend from high school, was able to find me a buddy pass and get me out there, which was amazing. And I think at that point I was a little bit in shock. So some things just I don't remember.
Okay.
Um,
John, we're going to talk about John a little bit more, and then we're going to move into Mandy's car because it wasn't just Mandy that was missing, but her car was missing.
mhm.
At any point when you talked to John, once again, because he's done an interview to this effect, he said that when he and Mandy were together for that month before she disappeared, that they had spoke of running away. Do you remember that John saying that to you personally?
It seems like to me something like that was mentioned, but I don't know any other details than that.
Would it surprise you if Mandy had thoughts of running away with John?
Not real. I mean, yeah, it would surprise me. Because of our closeness, she thanked me. She said, "Thank you, Mommy, for letting me come home." She thanked me. She wanted to come stay with me. And she um, never mentioned anything like that. And she said, "I'll always be in touch with you, Mom, unless I'm camping or something. And then I'll just let you know that." And they did go camping, and she got right back in touch with me when they got back.
So we just don't know
Um,
if that was John just saying something off the top of his head.
mhm.
We just don't know at this point, and maybe it could be all these
Yeah,
years later that maybe not even remember. He even remembers that could have just been some late night talk, just talking about running
sure.
away, and a lot of people do that. That's not so
Oh,
unusual.
who doesn't think of running away and doing something different? But I think it's
Mhm.
just something that's said or thought. Well, wouldn't it be fun if we could do this or that? But
Okay.
how many follow through?
Yep. We have our lives to take care of.
Right.
Now, Mandy's car, she wasn't just missing. On that Sunday, she went missing. John leads us to believe for that from his conversation that she was actually in her car going somewhere. We all
Mhm.
know when we talk to people in the car, even with Bluetooth technology today, we can kind of tell if somebody's in a car or not if they're talking.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
he led people to believe that she was in her car going somewhere when they were talking. And that's when the phone cut out. Her
Mhm.
car was missing, but then it was found. What can you tell the listeners about the car? Where was it? Where was it, first of all?
The car was down near Diamond Park, where people go jogging, and it's also a huge ravine where the car was actually found. Um, we thought it was found down the street across from a church, but come to find out when um, a few of the kids and friends were helping look in the ravine and pass out flyers, there came along a man who heard us talking and said that he had seen a car parked there for a few days on that street right near the ravine. And he said he had short-term memory loss and that he had a journal that he kept up with. When he would go out to smoke, he would journal so he would remember things. So he went inside and brought the journal out and showed us the page where he had drawn a diagram of where the car was parked, and the front of the car was parked towards the ravine, and it was in the street, not parked on the side of the street. It was parked in the street, according to him, and it was just there for 2 days. And I really don't understand why he didn't call somebody, but it sat there. And
So he's making it sound like not only with this car, once again, Mandy's car, as you said, it wasn't parked along the side of the road like somebody might do if you have a flat tire. You pull over to the side of the road, you get the jack out, or you call AAA or
mhm.
whatever. It was not like that. He's saying that the car was actually in a lane to the effect that if cars were coming down that street, they'd actually have to go around it.
That's the impression, yes, and from him and the diagram
Hmm.
in his book, in his journal, and
And he
he
and he led you to believe it was there for 2 days.
yes, until that Tuesday. From that Sunday when he saw it till that Tuesday, it was hauled off.
And have you ever been able to talk to the police about this? Have you anything with the towing company to back up this guy's story, at least regarding how the car was parked?
I haven't. The police have been very sketchy with what they'll tell me. And maybe I haven't asked the right questions. I am in the process of trying to get a hold of the detective about a couple of things, just to help me recall some things. But I mean, after all this time, I don't know. And maybe they do have some of those details, but I will tell you that, backing up a little bit, the detective was on the case at the time was, after it was gone, the case was gone from missing persons to homicide, only because they could get more help in a homicide case. I was told that the missing persons cops botched the case, because when I and my daughter and a friend were packing Mandy's apartment up, this was done before the cops went in and dusted the apartment. So everything was moved out before anything was done.
Wow.
So this, I wish I could sue them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not thinking and not knowing what to do, I think is, now I'm beginning to wake up and think, oh my God, why didn't I do this, or why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
You think that the police are going to be on top of things, and I think the detective now was very helpful. The case is a cold case, but it's still open, so they will take any leads, anything that would come in, any calls, anybody might have information.
Yeah. Too often after the fact, I think families who have missing loved ones, they found out after the fact that their expectations for the police were a little too high.
Way too high.
Way too high. Yeah.
And finding out certain things about a certain detective on the case in the beginning. Well, not the beginning, but in the beginning of the homicide part of it. Not too savory.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we want to get into that. We're just going to stick to Mandy's disappearance.
No, that's sorry. That's fine.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that because it doesn't it doesn't have anything, I believe, to do with her disappearance. Let's get back to the car. So it was parked in traffic allegedly, and it sat there for 2 days without anybody towing it. And it's a fairly busy street there, which stretches my imagination a little bit. But did this short-term memory guy? Maybe you can explain a little bit about him to the listeners. Did he creep you out a little bit? I mean, you were a little suspicious of him, weren't you?
Yeah. He seemed very nice, so cooperative. Even when I got back to Atlanta, he called me, but he would tell me some wild stories about the Oakland area, stuff that was going on that he felt like was really bad, very seedy, things going on, and what he had gone through. Felt like he was targeted. So he evidently somebody had rear-ended him, and I think that was part of maybe what caused his short-term memory loss. I'm not sure, but yeah, his stories, and doesn't mean that he's not legit or anything. It's just when something like this happens, your mind goes all sorts of places. It's like,
Of course it does.
he really came forward, had this whole thing, drawn and very helpful. Of course, my mind wandered about that. I mean, my mind wanders about a lot of things about what could have happened.
Yeah.
But this was, something that I let the police know about, and hopefully they covered well. But I haven't had a lot of feedback about some things. So I don't know.
Did this short-term memory guy realize that that car was connected to a missing persons case at the point when you
Um,
talked to him? Do you remember?
yeah, he heard us talking and putting the flyers up, and he, I guess, was connecting the dots, hearing part of a conversation, and then came over and talked to us, and then that's when he went in to get his journal and bring it back to us.
That's very
Which,
convenient, isn't it?
yeah, it seemed to me. So there again, it's like I don't know, but
Did the
I
police
can't
actually
give all that.
verify to you that the car was actually there? Did
Uh, hmm.
they were the ones who verified that the car was actually there. Then this other guy came forward. There is a corroborating story to what this short-term memory guy said, right?
No, no. The car in the beginning was thought to be down the street from there in front of a church, which is still next to Diamond Park. But according to this guy in his journal drawing, the car was up a little ways back towards Mandy. I guess it was about a mile or so from Mandy's apartment. But no, that was only verified by him, and we let the police know about that. So I don't know whether they interviewed a tow person or who towed the car. I don't know.
Yeah, that's something that I think you probably all these years later should follow up on. And I'll say that right
Totally.
publicly for everybody to hear. In fact, we've talked about some other things that maybe we that need to be followed up on that we're not going to get into because they should remain secret for now. But that's definitely something that um, maybe I should ask you this: how did you even find out about the church? Was that
I'm not really sure. I know that. Hmm. That's one I'll have to think on. I don't know,
all right?
but I
Why?
know
So you were
something
looking.
came up.
Let's try to back this up, just to help the listeners a little bit. The reason you were looking in the ravine down there because you did do a search. You had one of your other sons with you. You had other people there. You were searching that ravine was not because you thought the car had been parked in the street. You were looking in the ravine because you thought the car had been parked at this church, which is near the ravine. Is that right?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that somebody said it was pulled off the side of the road, and I wish I could recall. I did go up and talk to people at that church. Maybe that was it, that somebody said, yeah, there was a car parked over there. So that's why we thought that might have been it. But then after we found this guy with the journal, he had the drawing and everything, and all the facts of the car, the black Honda. Uh, and we did search a ravine then. We had been there to, put up flyers, and because that was the street, it was the same street that the first sighting of her so-called car across the church was found. So we were on that street anyway, putting flyers up. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when we found the guy with the journal
All right.
up the street a ways where he says the car really was parked
Do you even
because it had
remember? Do you even remember how you knew that Mandy's car got towed?
um
Because you didn't get out there for 2 weeks. Obviously, it had already been discovered by
it
that
had already
time,
been
and
towed.
it was impounded by that time. I'm guessing it was the police who finally told you, well, we found this car and we think it's hers.
The police told me.
Okay, and they're the ones though that said that it was found in a church or near a church or next to a church.
No, we were doing investigating ourselves, and I talked to people, and I'm pretty sure it was somebody at the church.
Huh.
But I can follow up with a friend of ours that was with me,
Okay. Well, that
and I
might be
can.
helpful. I'll update the listeners if you can do that. Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Okay. So either way, her car was found, whether it was in the street or next to this church. We don't know if this guy's just a kook or maybe he's actually offering something that's very substantial. My problem is that it's hard for me to believe that a car that's parked in traffic would sit there for 2 days. But I don't live
Mhm.
there. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, what was the condition of the car and what was found in it?
All of Mandy's things were found in it. Keys, phone, um, I'm pretty sure the debit card. I don't know if her purse was found. I don't know about that. I don't think so. Normally, Mandy, when she would go in somewhere, would put her things in the trunk. According to her sister, she would not leave her stuff on the seat. So that's bizarre.
Okay. Would you say, was there
And
any, so her phone was found?
yeah,
Okay. The phone that disconnected, during the conversation with John, to remind the listeners.
yes,
Okay.
yes, and all of her things. The car, once it was looked at after so long, the car had to go somewhere. And once my daughter checked it out, it had been, I think, about out of gas and the battery was dead. But then it had been sitting too, so I don't know if that was the condition of it when they found it, which seems like it would be an important fact.
Right. It might, maybe wherever it was parked, whether it was near that ravine, near the church, or wherever, it could have been parked with the headlights on. That would surely be something that would drain the battery
Yes.
very quickly.
Yeah.
So maybe that happened. But otherwise, the car was in otherwise running condition, didn't have a bad transmission or anything like that, to your
Not
knowledge.
that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. And what happened to the car? Was it checked for prints? Did the police do anything like that? And what happened to it? What happened to the car?
Well, the car went back because there was money owed on it. But there, according to what I've read, not really what I've been told, is that there was a little bit of DNA found in there, but that doesn't tell me much. I don't know what they found. They said biological, I think biological evidence was talked about in the show that we did. But no real evidence that I'm aware of.
No, of course, no blood or in the any signs of violence, nothing like that in the car at all.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. And so the car gets repossessed
Hmm.
because there's money owed on it, and we don't know what had happened to it after that. But the police did check
Mm-mm.
it out at least a little bit. But if she was in it when she was talking on the phone to John, and the phone was cut off in mid sentence, it
Hmm.
doesn't lead us to believe that the reason that that phone got cut off is anything violent. If she was sitting in that
Correct.
car, just something happened that didn't have anything to do with that. Okay. Did they
Uh-huh.
ping? Did they ping the phone? In those days and weeks after she disappeared, and what happened there?
Yeah, they did, and according to the detective, the pings were as if she was circling the apartment, not off where the car was supposedly um, found.
Hmm.
So uh, that's what he told me.
Okay, so they did have the final pings,
Hmm.
and the phone after that. If we're to believe that John was the last phone call, it's she was in her car, but it was very close to the apartment. And just so the listeners who don't live in Oakland, California, how far was the car away from the apartment when it was found? How many miles?
I think it was about a mile or so from her house, from her apartment.
All right, so it's possible then that it could be the same cell phone tower. It's possible. If it was
It
50
it
miles away,
could
that would be
be.
something else, but a mile away,
Mhm. And I could be off on that, but it wasn't. Um, According to the detective, the pings were not where the car was parked.
or it was found.
But then again, maybe she was driving and was within that cell tower, and then something happened.
Sure. We just don't know why that phone call ended. That's a very important part I think, of this case. Doesn't
And you
sound
know
like.
what my thought, I'm
Please,
sorry,
please go ahead. What's your thought?
which didn't occur to me until recently, and is that because they were up all night, maybe the phone didn't get charged and it just went dead.
That's a very
It
possible
died.
thought. Sure, very possible, very possible. So you went out there, you did the search in this ravine, put up these flyers. The only person who pretty much was helpful, if even that, was this guy with the short-term memory. Over the last 10 years, have you ever tried to get back in contact with him? Or was that the only interaction you had with him way back in
Well,
2007?
he would call occasionally and talk to me. He wanted to talk to me about Mandy and then about, things and about his experiences with Oakland. And I just felt it, it was just too much. I don't even remember his name. I would never, the police, all that, I turned over all that to them and kind of just didn't look back on that part. And, over the years, I think, I hope they checked him out thoroughly. And he may just be a really nice person and wanted to help. But then again, I don't know. I don't
Right,
know.
we just don't know. And maybe this is something that, as this case continues, maybe you should go back and check that guy out if you know where he lives. Maybe you can find out his name again. And I'll tell you this: if he's had problems with the law since then we
Hmm.
have to put him up there, maybe on the list of suspects for whatever reason.
Right. That's a very, very good idea. You are
Yeah.
very thorough.
I
Very
try to be. Thank you. I try to be. So that's
things I
something.
haven't even thought.
So 10 years later, it might not hurt to check up on him again.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
Let's turn this conversation back to Aaron. And I know this is, not only have you lost a daughter who disappeared, you have a son who is a suspect, and he has done things that seem a little suspicious. They just do.
Yeah.
We're just talking about facts here. That's all we're doing. Okay, that's all we're doing.
Okay.
Um, was he helpful in trying to find Mandy? Once again, in your opinion, that I know he wouldn't let the police into the apartment, but did he eventually talk to them? Did he ever take a lie detector test? Anything like that? What any help at all in those days and weeks after?
Well, I remember a few things he told me that he had taken a lie detector test, that the police had been very mean to him, uh, you know, feeling like they felt like he had done something. And he was very distraught about that when I was able to talk to him. I mean, I've talked to him some over the years, but he's not in touch very much. Can
Did
you
he? He
read?
took a you. He told you that he took a lie detector test. Did he tell you the results of that?
Um, I'm not sure. I think I purposely have blocked some things. All I know is he told me that he said that they had put him in a cell and tried to make him talk, and just according to him, they were not very nice to him
And we just
because
don't
they
know if he can be
assumed
believed.
that he had done something.
Okay.
Because he's an addict. He did tell me that when, I guess after the argument, that Mandy went to run errands, is what he said. That she went to run errands, and that was it.
And we do have to remember that Aaron was the one who actually called it in. It's not like he blew it off. I mean, he didn't call the right department, but he did tell you that she never came home, and he was the one who called in to the police. So at
Right.
least he did do a couple things that are fairly mature and forthright.
Yeah, and when we were at the ravine, there were a bunch of us trying to look around, thinking maybe Mandy had hurt herself and was in the ravine. All these things go through your mind. And so he was there with that. He told me that he did pass out some flyers. I don't know. He had to leave the apartment once everything was packed up. He had to leave. He was not on the lease or anything. And so in retrospect about the police coming there, they could have gone in, but it was Mandy's apartment.
Yeah.
And Aaron was staying there. He was not really, I mean, you know what I'm trying to say
I
there?
do. He's just a renter. He doesn't. It would be like I rent here in Florida, and if the landlord says that the police can come into my apartment, then they can do it because I don't own the place. It could have been the same situation there. The landlord could have easily said, you know what? You're not on the lease. Yes, the police can go in here, and if that means they break down the door, then I'm going to make you pay for it. Yes, they could have done that. Yes.
But see, there's so many little things like this that the detective was right. They botched it in the beginning.
Yeah. Did you ever hear from the police that Aaron actually took a lie detector test? Or are you just taking Aaron's word for it?
No, and that's another question. You brought up so many things that I need to call in about. I have put calls and emails into the detective that last was on the case. I haven't heard back yet, so I'm going to try again, and I'll be able to.
Okay, well, this episode is not going to come out for about not quite 2 weeks, so we have some time, and I'll gladly do my summation. If you get back to me on some of these things, I will add them in on at that point. Now the big problem, the probably the negative part about Aaron is that we discovered that he continued to tap into Mandy's checking account after she disappeared. How did you find that out?
Well, I believe the police, but my daughter also was able to find out some things about the account, that it was found active after she disappeared. I know that Aaron was writing checks on the account. And I know that at times I think she let him use her card, but I don't know positively. I think that was the case, but I don't know. I mean, I know that there was a picture of Aaron at the ATM that morning, but there was also another picture of Mandy at the ATM that morning.
Yeah, and let's take an opportunity to clear this up right now because we haven't even talked about the disappeared episode concerning Mandy's disappearance, and you appeared on there, but and I want to talk about that in a little more depth in a bit. But the main story out there is definite proof that Aaron was using not just having Mandy's checkbook, which might be something that might be left back at her apartment, but he was using an ATM card to go into her account. We're not quite sure about that's not exactly 100% true, is it? We don't know that for sure.
No, because my son who was with me out there, he pretty much recalls that the ATM card was in her things. But just to be for sure, that's another thing that I want to check on and find out positively.
Right, because in that episode, I mean, somebody using somebody else's ATM card after that person has disappeared is a big, huge red flag. And you don't have to be in
it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. And anybody, even if you aren't into true crime and following a bunch of stories that appear in the news every day, you know that's a really bad sign. But that we don't know that for real. Well, all we really know is that he was seen using the card that morning, and then they were also both of them seen together at an ATM that morning.
I don't recall together. I remember him being in one photo and she being in another photo by themselves.
By themselves. Okay.
That's what I remember. I don't remember them both being in a picture together.
Okay.
Um, and something else that was recalled was the last time the ATM card was used was at a some kind of convenience store, and they did not have video cameras, so there was no way to trace that. But evidently, it was used there the last time
Okay.
it was used.
But for sure, he continued to write checks on her account. Do you know how long that might have continued after she disappeared?
I think he pretty much drained what was left, and I don't remember what was left. A lot of that was her school money that she was going to go back to school with. But he had been draining that account, or taking money out while she was gone, while she was in New York.
Yes.
And
Right.
that's part of the argument. And then, of course, once she disappeared, he took the money out.
Okay. And is there any chance, if possibly he was using an ATM card, that Mandy might have had two ATM cards for that account? And maybe if one was found in the car, when the car was found,
Uh-huh.
it's possible that Aaron could have had another ATM card that he was using. So
I mean,
might not have ripped her
anything's
off at all.
possible.
It's
Yeah,
possible. Okay.
anything's possible. I don't know.
Okay. What do you want to tell the listeners about finding Mandy's earrings?
Well, her friend found them in Aaron's coat pocket in a little black box. Her diamond stud earrings, which I was given when we were cleaning the apartment out. I was given that downstairs, and that was very disturbing.
I bet. It could be, but we also have to look at it this way. It would only be disturbing if we knew that she was wearing those earrings the day she disappeared. If she wasn't wearing them that day, then him taking her earrings from her bedroom would be no different than him writing a check. It's the same.
No, because he would do anything as far as taking, jewelry, money for
Yeah.
drugs. So those I don't know that she wore them every single day. Um, Being in the box, means maybe they were on her dresser, um, and he just decided to put them in his pocket and
Mm-hmm.
try to pawn them, um, but that didn't happen.
Did you personally ever confront Aaron about the check writing and these earrings, and what did he have to say?
The check writing, yes, but I don't even think I've been able to talk to him about that, the earrings, because the conversations sometimes are coherent, and then there've been a few times where I could tell he was on something, but he usually doesn't call me unless he's having a coherent moment. But I think recently he's probably gotten deeper into drug use, if that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so no, I actually trying my best to get someone to put the word out to him that I need to speak with him, um, just to let me know that he's alive. And then there are some things that I intend to ask him.
So back when you got out to Oakland, 2 weeks, you got out there as quick as you could, but it was 2 weeks before you got out there. Aaron's there. Um, Once again, you said that at some point around then, those earrings were found in one of his pockets of a jacket. Of course, we know about the banking stuff. When you were able to ask him about that stuff, 2 weeks, he didn't give you any sort of explanation for any of it. He didn't ever said like, I have the earrings because dot dot dot. I wrote those checks because dot dot dot.
No, no, there was to me that was my whole thing was the stress of this.
Yeah.
When you're under that kind of stress, you don't always act or do things logically,
Sure.
or even what people think. Oh, why didn't you ask that, or why didn't you do that?
And
Well,
and
you're in
I
such a
don't want you to give that impression. I think that this is probably a question I'm sure the listeners are on their minds. I feel like I have to ask you. If you don't have an answer, you didn't do it. It's perfectly fine, Deborah.
yeah. Oh no, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you're not. No, you're very, very. You're great at what you're doing, and I appreciate this whole opportunity, and what the way you do it is very,
Thank you.
very fair and amazing. So I really
Thank you.
thank you, but
Thank you.
I don't recall. I mean, we all knew, and I'm sure his brother was there, talked to him. Um, I know that he was using in the apartment. I, saw the spoon and assumed that's what it was. Uh,
Mm.
and he was in a not a good mood. Um, to actually see someone come out of the bathroom after they've done something, and to see what comes over them, the look in their body once they've done something with the drugs is hard to process. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't had the experience, but to see it, and he was at times very annoyed and
Mm.
pissed off.
Okay. The disappeared episode. You've told me that you've never even watched it.
No,
And it's been
I
out, I
can't.
think it's about 5 years now. You've never watched it.
Uh-uh.
Okay.
No. Recently, my roommate, she went in the other room because she'd never seen it and she wanted to watch it. So I could hear my voice a little bit, and it brought back a little bit of that memory of it, but I can't watch it for various reasons.
Yeah.
Um, there's been a lot of criticism from all different sides because this thing aired. I was very apprehensive about doing it. I was promised certain things that wouldn't be, said or done, or I mean, I know they have to dramatize and that's what they do, but I think there are a few things that they did that I was told wouldn't be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too hard to watch.
I totally
I don't
understand that.
want to, but in hearing other people talk about people I know, that certain things maybe are discrepancies are not quite the way it was, and some things that were said. I think I would like to clear up at some point, but not having seen it, I just have to go by what others have said. And some people say that they thought it was well done. Um, and my main reason for doing that, of course, was to get her out there. Um, I was told by the detective before I did that show that they thought it could have been a kidnapping. So that's one reason I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other reason was I wanted to try to shed some light on my son, not try to what would you say, incriminate him, not incriminate him.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it maybe seems that way. He did that himself, but it doesn't mean that he did anything. But I want to do what I can to find the truth because I miss my daughter terribly. It's
Yeah.
a nightmare not knowing what happened. I don't
Mm.
I don't know what happened. And in doing this, maybe there'll be some information to find her, to find out what happened. And she is maybe still out there somewhere. Maybe she lost her memory, or maybe she was kidnapped. I don't know, but I in no way, I know that Aaron isn't a bad heroin addict, and I know that there are terrible things that happen when people are on drugs. But it doesn't mean that he did anything, and I don't want unnecessarily to shed light on him that would incriminate him.
Yeah.
I want to know what happened, but I don't know if I'm saying this properly, but
It's not what I think you're trying to say is that it's not like you're trying to pick on your son. You don't want to think that he did it, and there's really no facts that say
no,
that he did do it. It's not like any of his clothing was found with blood on it. It's not that he has ever been connected to the car. It's nothing like that. There are some
no, it's
suspicious
not.
things, and he had some criminal actions, but there's nothing connecting him to her disappearance.
Right, and it doesn't take away from what I want for my daughter. People say, well, on these chat rooms, they say, well, your son, why aren't you doing anything about it? Your son probably murdered your daughter. This is the kind of thing people say,
I know.
and
You should
that's
just
not
stay
the
away from that.
case.
Just got to stay away from that. You should just stay away
I
from the. You
do. I
just got to
do
stay away
now.
from it. Just got to.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to. But I do need to ask you this: what did Aaron think of the disappeared episode?
Oh, he was very angry because now he's known around the world as a murderer. And he said, Mom, I'm so upset that you did this. He was very, very upset and didn't speak to me for a while, but he did start speaking to me. But yeah, he said that he's known as a murderer. So that's what I did.
Okay.
That's what he thinks I did.
All right. We'll just
My intention, there's a part of me that wished I hadn't done it, but then, I mean, you would do anything to find your daughter, your child. No stone unturned. So
Okay.
he
We'll
really
just leave it at that.
hasn't.
We can just leave it at that. We can just leave it at that,
Okay.
Deborah.
Okay.
That he watched the episode, didn't like it, and having seen the episode, I can see the reason.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the reason. It makes him look suspicious, but
Yeah.
once again, in what I know, and you've told me a lot. There's some reasons to be suspicious, and there's some other reasons to not be suspicious. And each fact has to be weighed on its own.
Mm-hmm.
You did say that there was some small bits of DNA that might have been something in the car. Did you not also say that there could have been something found in the apartment as well, but it's not really gone anywhere, has it?
No, there was no evidence to show that there was a crime, or that anything had happened to her in the apartment. I mean, there could have been bits of blood, minute, from who knows. I mean, I don't know.
Nothing, though, found in the car or in the apartment or anywhere else that would lead anybody to believe that there was some fight in which Aaron or anybody else, any one of his friends or somebody else, did anything to Mandy.
That's correct. There was nothing.
Nothing. There might have been some blood found somewhere. Maybe she was shaving her legs and cut her leg, and that's how the blood got somewhere.
Could be anything.
Could be anything. Right, could be anything. This case of the disappearance of Mandy Stokes is a unique one because of all of the family interaction that is involved. Last year, I covered a case where two daughters went missing back in 1979, coincidentally down here in Florida, and I've become very, very good friends with their mother, who appeared on the program. This also is very family, a lot of interaction here. Families' lives intertwined because Mandy and her brother living together. You also have another sisters out there. You have all these other children who have been involved in the search and all these questions that have come up since then, and probably especially since the Disappeared episode came out.
Hmm.
What's it been like for them?
There are times when, well, I know there's been nightmares. Um, some put it in a box and put it away, don't want to talk about it. Um, because of initially having to speak to the detective, handle everything, getting DNA, and the whole thing had taken on a thing of its own, and some of them, a few of them, do not want to talk about it, do not want to be. They want to be able to enjoy their lives, because this, as a mother, having a good day, and all of a sudden you remember, well, Aaron, you know, Aaron, Mandy. It's like, and then it's like, it depends. I do my best to keep myself up. And for the kids, I think it's not knowing. They feel like it's been too long. And so as a mother, I keep trying, but the ones that were involved in the search and the speaking to the detective have very good lives, doing well. And this, me asking one question, might upset them for the day. So I'm doing my best not to do too much of that, unless I feel an opening and a mood that would help facilitate not upsetting them. But because they were so close to their sister, and it's just devastating, and it's just been like that ever since. And but they do have good lives and living well, good people. Um, but they worry about me. They want me to lay it to rest as best I can and accept whatever. It's just like I don't really know what to accept, because I keep thinking she has to be out there, that I could be able to see her again, and hug her.
I know that I don't know if it's ever come out in the public interview like this that goes on the program, but I know behind the scenes that some of these parents who have had children who have gone missing, one of the toughest things they tell me is to manage the fine line between spending a lot of time and attention on trying to find their son or daughter, but then giving equal time to their other sons and daughters.
Mhm.
Because it
Yeah.
can become an obsession. It can become an obsession, and you don't want these other children to feel like they're being left out. And in fact, you want them
Right.
to be a part of the process, but sometimes that's not what they want to do. And so you have to
Mm-mm.
it's hard to manage all of that.
Yeah, it is, because right now, one of them was very helpful this morning to um, talk to me about it and congratulate me on doing it, and knowing that I will be fine, and that's been the case. um, and I just do my best not to push the others, and if they want to talk to me, okay, but I understand. But it's something, as a mother, that you just can't let go of. You have to, it's like I feel like I have to do something to keep her alive. Um, it's different. It's just different, from a sibling to a mother. It doesn't diminish the sibling connection and love and heartache. And that's what I try to say when I have the opportunity. I know that you're feeling just as bad, and heartbreak. And to be reminded of it when you're caught up in your life, and occasionally I've done that to ask a question. I just need to find the best opportunity to do that and not interrupt a day with something that may not be as important to upset them as it is to me to find out at the moment.
Yes. I think that's a good way to put it. Do you have a Facebook page? I know that you are a member of the Unfound Podcast discussion group. It has
Yes.
over 1,800 members now. But do you have a Facebook page for Mandy? And because I know she's on the Charlie Project, she's on NamUs, but anywhere else?
Yeah, we have Help Find Mandy, which is on the Facebook. It's on my Facebook, but if you just put in Help Find Mandy, it should come up, and then people can be, come on and be accepted to join if they want to. Some people get on there and offer their prayers and thoughts and encouragement, which is wonderful, because to me that's very good energy to put out there, to keep her name and her life and her pictures and all that out there.
Okay. And I will surely link to it. By the time that the listeners hear this, they will know that I've linked to it in the group and other places in a run up to this episode. So I'm sure that they will go and join and find out anything else they can about you and about the disappearance of Mandy. Anything else before we end this interview, Deborah?
I just hope that the people that listen to this, maybe there's someone out there that might know or hear of something, might remember something, anything, or maybe that it might bring something to mind. Maybe she's out there and somebody might connect something. I believe in miracles. And I believe that this particular podcast maybe can help someone else. I don't know. But I just want to thank everybody for their prayers and good thoughts, and for you and what you're doing. I'm just so appreciative for you and for you doing this and for wanting to help.
Thank you, Deborah, and you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure after I get off of this podcast, I'll think of something to say. But if you can think of any question here or anything you'd like to ask me.
I can assure you, Deborah, that we're going to continue to work together. All right, this is just the beginning of our relationship. All right, I talked to many of the former guests, help them, whether it's an email, a phone call, brainstorming sessions. Sometimes they just need somebody to talk to. This is just the beginning of us knowing each other. I can assure you of that.
Well, thank you, because sometimes it feels so alone, just dealing with it. So it's nice to know that somebody really cares and is helping so much. It means a lot.
Deborah, you're welcome. And I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that was my interview with Deborah Murray, mother of Mandy Stokes. I thank her for being on the program. Deborah wanted me to add in this summary that she wants to deeply thank a longtime friend of hers, Dee Green, who has been so supportive since Mandy's disappearance in 2007. Deborah also wanted me to thank for her Detective Michael Cordoza from the Oakland Police Department. He is currently responsible for Mandy's case. Having said that, Deborah and I weren't able to clear up some of these issues that came up during this interview with Detective Cordoza. We couldn't get any more info as to whether Aaron passed the lie detector test or not. Deborah found out that Aaron removed money from Mandy's account, but the detective couldn't or wouldn't confirm if an ATM card was used. And where the card was actually found is still in dispute between the cops and the guy with the journal. If I get any updates with these issues or any other issues, I will pass them on to you. In fact, I will urge Deborah to update all of you in the Unfound Podcast discussion group on her own. Something Deborah and I didn't mention, and I'm going to mention it now because if you do any research into this case, you're going to find it because it's in the public sphere. It's in several news articles that you'll find. Mandy's boyfriend's first impression of what happened to Mandy is that she committed suicide. Granted, this was before he went to California, before he took part in the searches, before he knew any of the other information that has come out. And I don't know if his opinion has changed since 2007. But at the time, and remember, he'd just seen Mandy a week before, John thought it was a good possibility that Mandy took her own life. But for you, the listeners, there is zero proof of that. There is no proof. I started out this podcast talking about how Deborah is in a very hard place. Now that you've heard her story, the story of Mandy, the story of Aaron, and I'm sure noticed the conflict and hesitation in her voice, you know exactly why I gave this episode the title that I did. Yet, I also think this kind of disappearance and its circumstances put us, the listeners, and yes, that's what I am too, in a hard place. We are tasked with making an objective judgment on what happened, and that could mean deciding that Aaron is responsible for Mandy's disappearance. And I don't think any of us wants to do that. But we owe Deborah the truth. Of course, we may decide something different, but blaming Aaron is certainly persuasive. Because something we didn't cover is the contradictions in his statements of what he said he was doing when Mandy left the apartment. He was either in the shower when she left, or he wasn't. Just depends on what story you want to believe that he is told. But I'm not sure that even matters. The phone call and how it ended is what I'm concentrating on. What's clear to me is that it did not end due to something happening to Mandy. Had it, John the boyfriend would have heard a scream or the phone hitting the ground, something like that. But he didn't. So the question is, if the phone died, did Mandy go back to her apartment for some reason, or did she continue with her errands? Also, if the phone died due to a bad cellular area, is that specific area known to locals of Oakland? And can it be located now? Because that could be the area where Mandy actually disappeared, not where her car was found, and not where Aaron was. And I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a 5-star review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.